What's up, everyone? It's Megan here, and one thing I don't want to ignore rewatching The Girls Next Door now, especially with modern eyes, is the fact that for a huge stretch of this show, these women were essentially creating one of E's biggest reality franchises, initially for free. Or at least free in the way powerful men and entertainment industries have historically loved to define the word. I've been wanting to broach this topic from the very beginning, but wasn't quite sure where in the series it fit in or if it would take an episode too off course. It was actually a listener, one of you guys, that brought it back to my attention, so here we are in a bonus episode early in Season 2. Which is honestly perfect timing. So thanks to all for your support. I'm always open to your feedback, and you can connect with me at moregirlsnextdoor.com. So let me ask you to kick off your candies, hang up your trucker hat, and silence your sidekicks. Let's get into our first bonus episode of Season 2. According to Holly, Bridget, and Kendra themselves, they weren't originally receiving salaries for the show, which is kind of staggering when you remember how massively successful The Girls Next Door became for E and Playboy. These women weren't background decoration, they were the show. Their personalities carried it, their conflicts carried it. Their confessionals, emotional labor, appearances, awkward family visits, themed parties, and increasingly invasive access to their personal lives created an entire cultural phenomenon. And meanwhile, the justification for not paying them initially was essentially, well, Hef already gives you an allowance. And this is where the conversation gets complicated, because the mansion allowance, reportedly around $1,000 a week, worked out to roughly $52,000 a year tax-free. Then, by Season 2, it's been reported the women also began receiving around $1,000 per episode for The Girls Next Door itself. With a 15-episode season, there's another estimated $15,000 annually on top of the allowance. So before club appearances, autograph signings, hosting gigs, promotional work, magazine opportunities, or any outside income streams even entered the equation, each woman was already effectively making somewhere around $67,000 a year during the mid-2000s just for participating in the Playboy ecosystem. And really, when you factor in the reality that they also were not paying rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, luxury travel, or many day-to-day expenses most people their age were struggling to cover independently, the real-world value of the arrangement climbs even higher. The show absolutely elevated their visibility and earning potential. By Season 2, they weren't anonymous girlfriends anymore. They were recognizable reality television personalities during the absolute peak of the 2000s reality TV explosion. So I actually think it's important not to flatten the situation into a simple they were unpaid prisoners narrative either, because that ignores the very real financial advantages, opportunities, and fame attached to being inside the mansion system. But does financial benefit automatically erase the imbalance of power? Not really, because the core controversy was never just about raw dollar amounts. It was about dependence. The mansion operated less like a normal relationship and more like a fully controlled ecosystem. Housing, controlled. Transportation, controlled. Public image, controlled. Curfews, controlled. Financial independence, also controlled. Even opportunities outside the mansion often required Hef's approval because Playboy itself functioned as the gateway to visibility. So while, yes, the women absolutely benefited financially, there's still a legitimate argument that the structure itself kept everyone dependent on one extremely wealthy man whose approval determined almost everything. And let's be real, that dynamic wasn't unique to Playboy. It mirrored what was happening to a lot of women across the entertainment industry during the 2000s. Women were constantly told they should simply be grateful to be there. And if you complained, you were difficult, ungrateful, gold-digging, fame-hungry, pick your poison. Women who were assertive, ambitious, outspoken, sexual on their own terms, or simply unwilling to play grateful often got absolutely shredded publicly for it.
Fairly or unfairly, a few years ago, you developed this reputation for being difficult, and I've heard rumors that you're very rude.
I'm not a rude person. I'm not an unkind or mean person. I would never go out of my way or consciously try to hurt anyone's feelings or make them feel bad or uncomfortable or not be professional and do my job. I like my job, but I will continue to stand up for myself.
A perfect example is Katherine Heigl. By the late 2000s, she was one of the biggest actresses on television after Grey's Anatomy and movies like Knocked Up and 27 Dresses. But the moment she started publicly criticizing material she felt was sexist or beneath her, Hollywood turned on her almost overnight. She famously called Knocked Up a little sexist because she felt the women were written as uptight while the men were lovable slackers. And honestly, rewatching it now, a lot of people agree with her. But at the time, she was treated like she committed some unforgivable crime by speaking critically about a hit movie she starred in. Then she withdrew herself from Emmy consideration for Grey's Anatomy, saying she didn't feel she'd been given material worthy of nomination that season. Again, maybe blunt, maybe politically unwise, but not exactly monstrous. Yet the industry's reaction was intense. Suddenly, the narrative became difficult, unlikable, ungrateful, hard to work with, arrogant. And what's interesting is that male actors have historically criticized directors, scripts, studios, franchises, and award systems constantly without being permanently branded impossible. But when women did it in the 2000s, it often became a character indictment rather than just an opinion. Another example is Courtney Love.
In the way that Courtney Love is a very controversial figure in music, the things that she has done pales in comparison to that of male artists around her or before her, who themselves are seen as legends and completely left off for the things that they did. Jimmy Page. That is the double standard women in music face, and that is on a huge macro level.
Messy? Absolutely. But there were moments where she openly discussed exploitation, predatory behavior, and power structures in entertainment long before Hollywood was ready to hear it. And because she was emotional, chaotic, outspoken, and non-compliant with the cool girl image women were expected to maintain, much of the public dismissed her entirely as unstable rather than listening to the substance underneath what she was saying. You could even tie it into Monique a little later. She won an Oscar for Precious, then publicly pushed back about unpaid promotional expectations and industry treatment, and suddenly found herself described as difficult and effectively sidelined for years.
That I should accept that trauma. I should accept you not taking accountability for what you've done, what you've said, and we just washed the slate. That's why we're in the position we are now as a community, as a Black community, as a community in entertainment. Everybody's been so afraid to say, look what they did to me. Look what they said. And it's like, oh, well, listen now, we don't want to ruffle no feathers, especially if the messenger doesn't fit what people should think the messenger is supposed to look like.
Ugh, that word, difficult. It became a kind of industry weapon against women for decades, especially women who disrupted the expectation that they should just smile, stay agreeable, and appreciate the opportunity, no matter how exploitative the circumstances were. which fits perfectly into the Girls Next Door conversation because the mansion really operated on a version of that same expectation. Gratitude was the currency. The second you questioned the arrangement, expressed dissatisfaction, or wanted more autonomy, there was often this implication that you were selfish or not appreciating the fantasy everyone else wanted access to. And I think that's why discussions about Hefner remain so polarizing even now, because the women were simultaneously privileged and controlled, empowered and restricted, famous and dependent. The mansion sold freedom while operating on rules. It sold glamour while enforcing structure. It sold carefree fantasy while quietly functioning like a high-controlled institution behind the scenes. That contradiction is without a doubt one of the most fascinating parts about The Girls Next Door. And it's much more obvious as I'm revisiting the series now. Decades ago, when the show aired on television, I was captivated, but not at this level, not at this deeper layer. And I sure hope you're enjoying going there with me. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave me a message via the fan mail link in this episode or any one of the episode descriptions, or you can visit moregirlsnextdoor.com and connect with me there. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.